Hope everyone's doing well. Welcome to the podcast. This is Gus.
And JC.
This is the Financial Dad Podcast. So last time on the podcast, we got a little bit into like the personal, like where, when, how, why we're doing this, and just basically just some
information for y'all.
Yeah, it was just information. It was about our relationship and why I'm doing what I'm doing, why I feel like I have something to say, and but we really didn't get to what the whole point of the podcast was. So we're going to hit on the first two again, and then we will go right into it. So number one was the reason why and you hear this a lot about the number one thing in all business or even just relationships is focusing on relationships. Relationship with yourself, relationships with your team. And I'm a big believer in team. If I believe that if you have access to be responsible for another person doing well, you will learn how to be a good teammate. And I've seen her excel in team sports, and it just changed her. It made her look at life differently, and as well as her family, and it did for me too.
And you find like exactly who you're working for and why you need to do what you're doing. And it just puts other people above yourself.
That's right. And so it's like passing the ball. So
Yes.
the majority of the people, I use a lot of sports, a lot of sports analogies and stuff like that. So if you're a passer and you're okay with somebody else making the shot, but they would not have been able to make the shot without you. That's relationships, and that makes a person, kind of dummy down their ego and pride, and makes you a person that understands.
And one key thing is don't have relationships or don't stay in relationships with people who aren't benefiting you while you're benefiting
That's
them.
right. It's a give and take. There's a synergy to it. That's a big word that I use a lot. And also, you also have to, I made the little comment, varsity. So if you want to do well in life, you have to find a mentor. And so like JV always practices against varsity. Mm-hmm. That way you are practicing harder than you play. You always practice harder than you play. And so
it's like the star person on the team is always being talked about, so the younger people are looking up to him.
And the guy that's doing the best, you will never, ever, you hear this a lot. I hear this a lot. The guy that's doing really well will never look down on the guy that is on the come up. You never will. It's the people that want to hold the come up guy down that talks the most junk. I mean, that's how it is in financial.
Because they wish they could be in that spot.
So what we're going to go over today are just 5. There's many things that people can say are like the 5 things, the 8 things, the 10, but these are just 5 things that I put together that I believe will help people get on the path to success.
Like a starting point.
That's right. So number 1 is focus on relationships. Number 2 is the limit of obligations and responsibilities, because obligations and responsibilities are forced servitude. If you have to do something, that is an obligation or a responsibility, and they're going to come soon enough. Consequences. So the consequences of your actions is one thing that a lot of people don't talk enough about today. That can be good and bad. So the consequence of being disciplined, there's good consequences. The consequences of not just kind of floating around, just not knowing what you're doing, there's a consequence to that. Number 4, I go into a lot about credit cards because I don't believe that there's a hard no to anything. So a lot of the financial gurus, they put hard no's on everything. And I don't believe that if you take no's off the board and you just educate people on how to use them or not use them.
And many people are taught from the get-go not to even touch a credit card. Don't mess with them. Don't put things on them. Use your debit card if you can.
Yes. And so unfortunately in today's world, because we're moving more virtual as well as cashless, which everybody gets beat up about being we're a cashless society already. Mm-hmm. Everything is ACH, everything is debit, everything is credit. you don't really see. I mean, you got places now that won't even accept cash.
Yeah.
And so you have to protect yourself. There's an insurance policy that you should take with yourself in regards to retaining the funds that you have, and pretend that you are cashless already and go from there. But learning about credit cards, I believe that if you're educated enough about financial products, then there's a line. If there's no hard nose, everything's on the table, then it's your choice whether or not you touch the line and go past the line to use those in your financial journey. So that's number 4 is credit cards, because I see that those are the most where people get in the most trouble. Mm-hmm. It's credit cards. They're not an extension of your funds. They are a tool that most people can't handle or manage, and it gets them in trouble. Number 5, save. So you hear a lot about saving, and so the point behind saving is you cannot set aside zero. And if you do this or can't, it's because you have too much. So go back to number 2. You have too many obligations and too many responsibilities, and you can't take care of it or you can't handle it. And so I think that those are the main 5 things that are more lessons than they are specifically about certain financial products that we're going to talk about today.
To really get to the point, being 19 years old, to really get to the point of understanding finances and using it, you have to first develop these things that are on the board to get to the point of using them correctly.
Well, it's more of a discipline thing. And so I will digress a little bit, and I will say I haven't always been this way. I knew the lessons, but I had to teach myself. I had to go through a ton of mistakes. And fortunately enough, I use this type of language with my kids, especially my 2 older kids. Don't go so far down a road that you can't come back. You have to, if you want to touch the line, it's your choice. I told you about the line. Mm-hmm. If you touch the line and you decide to go over the line, it's your choice. Huh?
Most kids want to.
Well, yeah, everybody wants to. Everybody wants to go over the line just to see if they can do it, to see what happens. Mm-hmm. What happens if nothing happens? What happens if there's nobody there to slap you on the hand?
Yeah. And that's when the discipline and the teaching yourself to say no and to do certain things comes in.
Well, I can promise you this: a bank or an insurance company will take every penny that you have. They want you to cross the line.
Yeah.
And they will take. There is nobody other than the people that hold you accountable. Mm-hmm. But what if there's nobody to hold you accountable?
Well, then you have to find that person.
No. Well, yes.
Or be that person for yourself.
Or be that person. But what happens is people constantly touch the line, and they go years and years and years. The next thing you know, you're not 19. Mm-hmm. The next thing you know, you're 50, and you have nothing.
Can you explain how that hurt someone?
Well, it hurt me. I've been fortunate enough that I'm not super flashy. Mm-hmm. And I like what I like, but, and I will say that most men revert to like their, what they didn't have as a kid. So what did I consume? Mm-hmm. I consumed things that I did not have as a kid, and I focused in on those. It was like buying crazy things like baseball cards, guns, which, can you have too many guns?
Containers of baseball cards sitting in the storage unit.
Can you have too many guns? I am from North Carolina, but it becomes something that material does not mean that you have anything. Mm-hmm. And you learn that, and I learned that. Material means you have obligations and responsibilities. You got to take care of that stuff. You have mm-hmm. to store it. You have to put it in boxes. It takes up space. It takes up a lot of stuff.
And mental space, because you're worried about what's there, and then you can't focus on getting to this point.
That's right. You'll never win with buying stuff that you don't need. You'll never win. I mean, there are, especially for somebody who has obligations.
Mm-hmm. Can you explain why you have synergy next to consequences?
So synergy, I use the greatest synergy in the world is people driving. I use that a lot.
Why?
Because if you look at it, there are whatever millions of cars on the road. Mm-hmm. So we live in a pretty large county. And so what? Just
go. I'm laughing.
So the people drive by each other every single day. What stops somebody from just pulling over?
They're gonna die.
Well, you could die. There's an insurance consequence. There's a totaling of your car consequence. You could have a kid in the back seat. The kid might pass away. You could kill somebody else. And so there is a synergy of people working together so there's no consequences. So you cannot worry about what the world is doing. You have to hold yourself accountable with consequences. So, and again, if there are no no's are off the table. It is totally your choice what you do.
Meaning you could just do whatever.
You could do whatever. You could go out right now and run your car in a ditch. Well, there's a consequence from that.
Yeah.
So why don't you do it?
And how do those consequences affect you financially?
Well, they're going to hold you back from the things that the next day when you like wake up and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. There's a consequence from that. And so, but I think a lot of people don't pay attention to consequences because they feel like it takes away their freedom, their fun.
See, I disagree. I agree with that, but when you don't think of the consequences at all, how can you focus on what you want?
And you've always been this way?
Nah.
Okay, then. So I think that's all of us. I think it's human nature that we don't want to be told what to do.
Yeah. We just want to go have fun.
Yeah, we all just want to have fun. And I think when we forget how to have fun is when these lessons that are like biblical, every single one of these are in the Bible.
Yeah.
Every one of the greatest self-help book. And I'll say this, every self-help book in the world stems from the Bible. Every one of them. They just can't do that because it won't sell. But last time on the previous episode, we did focus on relationships. And what that means is I've destroyed a lot of relationships in my life, and I've been tough. And I think that giving people grace as well as putting effort into good relationships. The only reason why people don't invest in good relationships is out of shame. That's it.
And the biggest thing you can do as someone my age is really don't put yourself in a bubble and try and find a good group of people.
Well, COVID messed everybody up.
It's difficult.
COVID gave people a reason to stay home and not do anything. So if you were reclusive or timid or shy, which most 13 to whatever
girls
age,
also like to just focus on always being with a boyfriend or being with someone and don't take the time to make other friends and make other connections.
Yeah.
That
there
could
are no
lead
connections
to
in social media.
more connections.
Social media is not human interaction. It is an interaction, but you are being manipulated into feel one thing or another with most social media. It's steering.
And how would you say that having good relationships has gotten you to the point financially?
Well, I've gotten rid of all bad relationships, every single one of them.
But how did that hold you back?
I think that in my world, in the financial world, or just in the dad world, it gives you a reason to go do things that you should not focus on. So instead of spending time with my wife or spending time with my children or spending time just on my obligations.
Which is free.
Well, yeah, it's free, but it also, and I'll probably say this every episode, if you give a man a way to screw up his life, he will do it. He will absolutely destroy his life when he gets bored. And so a man, and I guess I could ask you the same thing, when you get bored, do you make great decisions?
No.
Yeah.
Because I could sit down and read a book if I'm bored instead of going out with my friends or doing something fun.
Well, I think that it's okay. I think that going out with your friends is fine. I think it depends on what you do when you go out with your friends. Are you touching the line? If there are no no's, there are no no's in the world. Everybody says, and I keep saying this, everything is like a hard no with don't use credit cards. Don't buy a new car. Don't do this. Don't do this. Don't do this. And I think it's just if you want to touch the line.
Yeah.
So everybody is free choice. So I am married. If I wanted to test the waters with a person by saying something to him that I shouldn't say, I'm touching the line.
Yeah.
Or I cross the line just by going to the line.
And then that messes up your marriage.
Well, now I'm doing exactly what I said. Well, no, maybe my wife never finds out.
Well, the truth always comes out.
Well, it came out in how I treated myself. And so, but I think that the focus on the relationships and the burning. So I use this down. I'll burn it down. I've developed that philosophy in like the last 2 to 3 years. If it is not bringing quality to your life, then you got to burn it down. You got to let it go.
And do you think that having bad relationships and having all these obligations lead to bad financial decisions?
It leads you to a place where you are not hopeful. You are hopeless. Because you have to wake up the very next day and work to pay off last month's debts. That is a financial, do you get what
disaster.
I just said? Do you get what I just said?
Yes, because you're trying to pay something off from last month that you don't have the money for to begin with, because how are you going to pay for next month?
Well, you're going to be under somebody's thumb, and you don't have to be. And so I think that's a big deal in today's world, is where people, especially parents, they feel hopeless because they don't have a choice. Their choices have been taken away from them. And if you don't give people choices, then and somebody else is making the choice for them, then that leaves to a man, I can't speak for women, that makes a man feel hopeless. And so...
And how can you use your finances to bring that hope back and learn about finances to restore that?
Well, I think acceptance. You have to accept where you are. You have to look in the mirror and make a promise to yourself, which is hard. If you can't keep a promise to yourself, and I fail every day. I mean, if you cannot keep a promise to yourself, how can you keep a promise to somebody else?
You won't.
Well, you can't. It's a lie. It's a lie. It's like somebody starting a diet. And so, and then you write everything out. I'm going to start on January the 1st or whatever day. It doesn't matter. And then a few days later, you just give up. So you broke a promise to yourself. And so I think that discipline and accountability is a learned skill. You have to learn it by mistakes. You have to get tired enough.
Like a credit card. If you charge enough things on it, then you're tired of paying it, then you probably won't do that anymore.
Well, nobody teaches people about credit cards.
So then what's the number one thing that people should know about a credit card?
Credit cards are not an extension of the amount of money that you make.
Meaning?
So if you make $100,000 a year and you have a $10,000 credit card, you don't have $110,000.
Yeah.
And so you can't use the credit card. Credit cards are basically a safety net. So it's like with us becoming, more digital, then and online and everything, and safety wise, the banks are making it just about impossible. You should not use debit cards. You should not, because
why is that?
Well, there's no safety net for debit cards. A lot of your older generation uses debit cards, and then they have a breach and they lose some money, and it takes time to get that money back because somebody online stole your digital footprint. And yeah, it happened to you.
Yeah,
it happened
several times.
So it has nothing to do with the older generation.
Yeah.
Even though I told you not to use your debit card, you still did it.
The number one thing that people open for their kids first at 16 years old is a checking account.
Sure.
So should they open a checking account or a credit card?
Well, I think that, opening a kid a checking account, it depends on the purpose. What is the purpose of that checking account? And so it's completely pointless because you're not really, unless you are very disciplined and you're saving money inside of a checking account for a future use, then what is the point behind it?
Yeah.
And so I would say that people that use debit cards need to immediately stop.
Why?
Well, your debit card is a direct link to your cash that you have in a bank.
Because it comes out instantly.
And so that is the number one frauded account is a checking account. So you have people trying to take money out of your account every single day. Every single day,
I can't believe people actually just sit around and try and do that all day.
Well, there's a lot of money in it.
Yeah.
You think about, if a bank has a breach, and remember, money is only zeros and ones.
Meaning?
If you go and you make a deposit of $1,000 in the bank, the next day that money's not there. It's ones and zeros. That money is not sitting in the bank.
Okay.
So all the deposits that we make in our bank, they don't sit there.
Yeah.
And so it's like this: deposit $1 million, then go try to get $1 million out.
Not going
It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
No. And so the debit card is a direct link to your money. Now, some people use debit cards, but then the likelihood, and you can research this is a fact. People cannot steal from credit cards. You can dispute.
And why is that?
Well, you can dispute a credit card transaction that you know is not yours. And the credit card will put that money on hold, and you can then dispute it, and they will research it to see if it was actually your transaction. And if it's not, they'll put the money they'll take that charge off.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen with the debit card.
No, it takes months.
Well, I'm not going to say it takes months, and banks have gotten better with it, but it does take time. So this is where credit cards are not an extension of your funds. They are a tool that most people can't handle and manage. And
so what's the best way you would say to manage your credit card and manage what you're charging to it?
Well, number one, if it's not an extension of how much money you make, you don't go buy stuff that you can't pay for.
So don't go buy stuff that you would not normally go buy.
Well, I'll give you a good example. So you go buy, and it's all based off of what you need. So let's just say you need something that costs $100.
Okay.
Number one, if you don't have $100, but you're basing that purchase off of your ability to pay for it in the future because you're going to make $100. Okay, cool. Remember, there are no no's. Okay, but nobody teaches people the consequence or what happens when you charge that $100.
There's interest.
Well, if you let it go past the term, then yeah, or when it's due, then there will be interest on that money. So you didn't pay for $100. You might have paid $128 for that thing that cost you $100. And so what happens is that it builds and builds and builds. So if you just went and you charge,
What you're having to pay builds and builds.
Well, the algorithm is so complicated inside of a credit card that nobody knows. You might be paying for stuff that you bought 3 months ago if you let it build and build and build, meaning that you're charging stuff and not paying it off. People don't teach anybody this. Same thing with a car. So if you go,
What do you mean?
So if you go and you buy a car, a brand new car, and let's just say in today's world, a brand new 4Runner, 50 grand. Okay, so you go buy a brand new 4Runner and it's $50,000. Okay.
Okay.
And you finance it you can finance things up to 84 months now. So 84, so that's roughly, let's say $700-800 a month. Nobody ever asks what is the interest that they're paying on that. They just figure out if they can make the payment based off of their current income or what they think that they can sacrifice to pay for that car payment. Nobody ever asks what the real price is for that car.
Or what their other payments that they're making, other things that they're making payments on are.
Well, it becomes a staple obligation, meaning that you are working now to pay for next month's. Most people.
So you're saying that it's smarter for people to keep a car that's paid off or keep the car that they already have and save their money rather than go and buy a new car and finance it?
I think it's smarter for people to accept where they are and become educated instead of just making and I've done it.
Instead of people trying to be more than what they have.
Well, there's a lot to be, that's the psychological part of it, but if you just look at the math of it, just the math, forget about looking good because everybody wants to look good. That's why I say there are no hard no's.
Yes.
If you're making $100,000 a year and you're bringing home $10,000 a month, after taxes or $8,000, and you want to go spend $500, $800 a month on a car payment, and you understand the math part of it, cool, go for it.
Yeah.
Nobody's telling you no. But if you do that every 2 years and that 800 is now 900, you get a 5% or 10%. Let's say you get a 10% raise, 10% on 100 grand. Now you're making 110, but now the price of a car goes up 3 or 4 years later from 50 to 55. You didn't make any more money. You spent that raise on a new car. So I had this conversation earlier today with a buddy of mine. He bought a brand new car. And he was like, gosh, he said, I hate to just go buy it. And I was like, well, you're taking the hit now. So pay for the car now over whatever term, 5 years. And if you keep it 8, now you're dividing that 70,000 by 8 years instead of dividing by 5. So the point is that people get enamored with the reason why debt is so high is because there's no consequences. Nobody taught you about the consequences or the real numbers.
And people are going straight to 5 to buy a new car, buy a new house, and buy this instead of doing the things to save and build up to that.
Okay, so let me ask you this.
Okay.
Let's go timeline.
Okay.
Let's go 19. So where are you right now as a college student?
Meaning?
What's going on in your life right now? Financially.
I work.
Okay.
I save half of what I make. And I live at home, so I'm not having to pay for a crazy amount of things. And my car's paid off, so there's not that.
Okay. So let's fast forward. Let's just say that you had a great, that your job while you're in school. Okay. So let's fast forward to 3 years. Let's go by 3 years.
Okay.
So you drive your car for 3 more years.
Okay.
You're out of college. Let's say that you're out of college. You got a great job, right? Let's say you're making that 100 grand a year.
Okay.
Okay. You trade in your car. So now how old are you? You're 20, almost 24 or 23. You're 23 now. So, and you can afford that car, but you've put yourself on the hook for 5 or 6 years on a car payment, right? So what are your obligations at 23?
Well, I'm probably going to live out of the house, so rent.
Rent.
And then groceries.
How much is rent?
Where we live, anywhere from $500 to $1,800.
Well, there's a big difference. So let's split it in the middle. Let's say $1,500.
Okay.
So let's go rent's $1,500. Let's just talk about staple obligations.
Okay.
So $1,500 a month of rent. Okay. What else?
Groceries,
Okay.
gas,
Let's go $500 on groceries. So now we're up to $2,000.
gas.
So that might be $1,000 by itself. Let's just
For
go.
me, I drive so much.
Let's go gas, insurance, and maintenance. Another $500.
Okay.
Okay. So now you're up to $2,500. Okay. What else? So let's just say all together. So let's just say your expenses are $5 grand a month now.
Okay.
Okay. So $5 grand. So you've put yourself, but let's just say you don't get a raise. This is where a lot of people get slammed. So let's go 3 years past that.
Okay.
So now you're 26. What's going on?
Well,
And let's
things have
just
gotten
say-
more expensive because
That's
of
right.
inflation. And then
What did you just say?
things have gotten more expensive because of inflation.
That's the financial dad coming out. Okay, go ahead.
So everything costs more. So rent went up, gas went up, groceries went up. So then
And now you're 26.
still making 100, or have I gotten a raise?
Let's say you're making 110.
Okay, so it's gone up 10,000, but
So you're
inflation
above
has
the
also
average.
gone up.
So you're above the average of what people make here. So
But
let's just-
is the inflation from the period that I was 23 to 26, is that 10K?
no, and 10K was your raise. That has nothing to do with inflation.
I
That
know,
was
I'm
just how
saying
much
that, but
money.
how much things have inflated, would that equal to the 10K that I'm getting paid?
No,
Would it be close?
it wouldn't matter because everything has gone up, meaning that gas, food. Let's just, my point behind this is not only at 26 years old, you have other obligations that you have now introduced into your life that cost.
Yes.
Maybe you want to go on vacation. Maybe you want a dog. Maybe you want, maybe you need a lawnmower. Maybe you need whatever. So the problem is that people don't understand. They don't look outward. They buy things based on, and men do this. I've done this. It's like a drug. I always prided myself on not doing drugs.
Yes.
But ego and pride is a drug. How you look to somebody else and getting pats on the back is a drug. Words of affirmation that you need from other people is a drug.
So you're saying the best thing you can do for your finances is let go of your ego and pride and focus on the end goal.
The math.
Yes.
The math never lies.
Yes.
I think that to hit on the savings again is setting aside zero is not an option.
No.
So I think
there's many people my age that probably have $20 in their bank account right now and zero in their savings.
Well, that's because they're living off of somebody else. They're living off of their dad or parents. They're living off something. They're living off of school loans. Nobody ever taught them anything. So I think that's the key is ego and pride.
And the best suggestion, even if you are living off your parents, is go and get a job.
Well, there has to be somebody that puts pressure on a kid that says, and that's the problem that I find, a lot of parents don't want to look at their kids and be honest with them. Hey, your financial obligations are making us struggle. That's got to start early. It started early with you guys. It started early with you. It started off so early with you that you did not like what I had to say. And so
I've had a job since I was 16.
Yes. But did you like them? Did you stick with them? No. So nobody does. But on the savings part of it, the default answer can be, I'm not going to save anything. And the reason, if you get to the point where you're saving nothing, it means you have too many responsibilities and too many obligations. And this is pre-kids. We're not talking about people with children. That's a whole nother episode. That's a whole nother thing. If you exhaust...
That one's going to have to be by yourself. I'm not at that point.
Well, if you exhaust everything that you make and you're not building anything, you're a W-2 employee. And you don't have a second source of income and you have no plans for the future. Your plan for the future is to work for somebody else, either as a W-2 or an entrepreneur or salary plus bonus, and you're not saving anything, that's a problem. And it's going to be a problem.
The best suggestion is start saving as early as possible.
Well, it needs to be a habit.
Yes.
But the problem is just like with insurance policies, people don't do it long enough because they can't see the benefit of doing it long enough. And so the savings has to start early, or it just has to start. The problem again is people put too many staple expenses. They live beyond their means. They're living off of credit cards. They're living off of next month's or even 3 months away money. And then they put themselves in financial peril. And so so the number one thing that I can say about these 5 are focusing on keeping things simple is super important. It's so simple, it's boring. And so saying no a lot, you have to say no a lot. You don't have a choice. That doesn't mean say no to fun. Remember, if there are no no's, there are no no's.
No just means that you have discipline.
Well, no means that you find that something is more important today, this second. It doesn't mean no forever. But it's like you at 19. If your friends are going out and doing something, but you know that you have something to do, you know you have a test, you know this, and you decide to cross that line and go do it, then you're going to get what you get.
Yeah. You know? I don't go out a lot as it is at all.
And so I always say this in all of our podcasts. The number one person in your life is yourself. If you're not building on you, building yourself up, educating yourself, then how can you help anybody else? That's what's wrong with a lot of parents today. They are upset with themselves, so they don't teach good habits because they don't have good habits. But that can end. That can start at any point in time. You can do a hard stop. It's not. You don't have to die with it. You can decide, look in the mirror, stop making the same mistakes, and decide that a different path is worth it. That's important. So again, what we talked about today is relationships. We talked about obligations and responsibilities and forced servitude from, staple expenses that you put yourself on the hook for. We talked about consequences and synergy. working together because of a positive outcome.
You have to look at the end goal.
That's right. Or you have to be smart enough to acknowledge that there is an end goal. That's a lot of people just don't want to admit that their choices are going to lead to something. And choices are not always bad. In the financial world, whenever you're talking about, there is a positive from setting aside $100 a month. It doesn't matter what the stock market does. It doesn't matter what crypto does. It doesn't matter about anything. If you become disciplined enough to set that amount of money, it doesn't matter. You can turn the stock market off.
Yeah.
Just don't even look at it. You put in $100. I mean, the stock market's down right now. 3 weeks ago, it was 10% up. Now it's 10% down. But it doesn't matter. But it does matter in the financial goal of everything. We talked a little bit about credit cards. The credit cards are just a tool, but it's the main thing that people focus on in regards to doing or not doing. And so credit cards they're not an extension of your money that you make. They're just a tool. The problem is nobody teaches people how to use credit cards, good or bad. And then it can be a decision that you make about whether or not you choose how to do credit cards. I think the easiest way to learn financial is you talk about it with your family, because
they'll hold you accountable.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's hard to disappoint your wife. It's hard to disappoint your husband, but you have to acknowledge that those things are there. Well, it's a family disappointment, or it's a family win. And so that there's it. The hardest, I think the worst time that my wife and I had is whenever she looked at me and she said, one of the obstacles we had to get over is whenever I was making financial decisions without asking her. And that had to end. I was being selfish and I was not doing what was best for my family. And then, of course, saving money. One
of the best things you can do.
It is. A person in today's world should save 25% of whatever they make. Number one, you don't have to do it forever. But if you get in the habit at any age of saving 25% of what you make, not of gross.
And the earlier you start, the better.
That's right. Not of gross, of what you bring home. If you take away 25%.
Can you explain gross in that real quick?
Well, gross is the whole. So gross is how much money that whoever you work for says that you're going to make. So if you say, hey, I'm going to pay you $100,000, what they don't tell you is that the little thief right there is taxes. It's taxes, it's health insurance, it's 401k contributions. So what an employee says that they're going to make is not what you're bringing home. So gross is what you're told that you're going to make. Net is what actually gets deposited into your account. Okay. And so you really need to take account of the net before you go and you make a financial decision. If you do your budget, and budgets are preached today. All a budget is knowing how much you spend. Because
versus
it's not
how much you make.
That's right. Where is the money going to come from?
Extra money.
Where is that money going to come from if you spend more than what you make? It either has to come from somebody, or credit cards, or debts, or loans, or something, which means that you're putting yourself in servitude. So there's that. But that's pretty much the 5 things that I believe that can start people on the right path, or put you on the right path if you're in a mistake. You can be in a mistake season of your life. Put you on the wrong
path if you don't do them.
Well, everybody does, but it's a season. And I think that no matter if you're 19 or if you're 48, you can acknowledge that this is where you are and talk to somebody and make changes in your life, which are hard.
Educate.
It's very hard. It's very difficult for people to do a U-turn. Okay. Thank you for being part of our podcast today. This is Gus.
And this is JC.
And we will see you next time.
Thank you all.